Innovators and entrepreneurs. So, where does all the work happen? Often in innovation and entrepreneurship. Thinking about SDG2, zero hunger by 2030 is really ambitious. And you all come from different walks of life, different professions. Lauren, what is the most important thing we need to know about you before you start talking?
I'm a Cancer. No.
So am I. What's your birthday?
June 25th.
Okay, June 30. Happy birthday to us.
Yes. No, I'm so excited to be here. Thank you, Kellogg's. Thank you, SDG2 Hub, for hosting. I've started Feed 11 years ago, and truly was just inspired as a student, actually still. I was able to travel around the world, mainly with the UN World Food Program, and saw the realities of hunger and poverty firsthand. So my journey to starting Feed really began there, kind of in the field, visiting communities, visiting schools and houses, where the next meal isn't guaranteed, where the birth lottery truly exists.
Okay, so founder of Feed is the most important thing we need to know about you.
Sure, you want
and we'll find out more about that in just a moment.
Yes.
Fantastic. Anahita, the most important thing we need to know about you before you start talking.
So I'm a chef from India, and representing India, and going to be talking to you about a couple of things: Chefs Manifesto, millets, and all the other stories where we want to get things done.
Okay.
And we want to get that action plan going, like Arthur said.
All right, very good. Jane, hello.
Hi.
Hi. Why are you important? What do we need to know about you?
What do you need to know about me? I love food. I love innovation, and I love being a food innovator, and I believe that as an innovation person in food, I have a responsibility to provide better nutrition, make that more accessible to everyone.
We have a new tradition now at our Transforming Systems to Drive Impact on SDG2 Kellogg's discussion, and that new tradition is a show and tell. It started about an hour ago, but we're going to continue. So we have a show and tell. Anahita, thank you for starting our new tradition.
Absolutely.
Here we go. What is in the purple bag?
In the purple bag, first
Yes.
we're going to do a cheers of the purple bag.
Okay.
Cheers.
Cheers. Okay, cheers.
Yes, absolutely.
Okay. All
That's
right.
a pretty bag. It's an Indian bag. It's a bag full of millets, different millets.
Okay.
And as you know, India is it's a beautiful country. So many cultures, so much heritage. And the interesting part is we've got some amazing grains. As Chef Pierre was talking about fonio, millets and fonio were brothers and sisters. So when Paul introduced us, he was like, millet, meet fonio. And we were just like, that is the best introduction ever. And
One
that's
day
why
somebody will have a date on that
I
line.
think we can plan that out this
That's
week
possible.
in New York. Absolutely. So a quick little introduction about millets.
Okay.
It's a super grain. It's a tiny grain which is full of nutrients, and especially want to talk about one which is called finger millet, which is ragi. The interesting thing about
say that
ragi
again?
is ragi, R-A-G-I.
Ragi, okay.
So ragi is finger millet. It's got three times the amount of calcium that milk would have. It's gluten-free. It's full of zinc and iron. It's so good and nutritious. And it's been growing in India. It's been growing for centuries, and we've been using it. The sad part is the last 20, 30 years with urbanization, globalization, what's happened is we've got farmers who stopped growing those crops, and because they've stopped growing those crops, they've actually stopped feeding them to their families, and the nutritional value goes down, and cash crops come in: wheat, rice, maize, because that's what sells. So as a chef, I think it's interesting for me to be here, to be a connector. Obviously, part of the Chefs Manifesto, where we're chefs from all over the globe connecting. But the important messaging here is to look inwards. I loved what Gerda said. She said, we're all influencers in our own way. We're not just chefs, we're people. We can go back home, we can talk about it, we can talk about ingredients. And I'm gonna throw something at Jane later, but you've got a packet right there, which everyone can open and see. There are little recipes inside that, so you're being empowered right now.
Right. Lauren, what are you thinking right now?
I gotta try millet. Sold.
You've got an entrepreneur story. that really sort of connects with the idea of doing social good, which is what the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are all about. But before the SDGs were even sort of a twinkle in somebody's eye, you were doing the work that you do. Can you explain what it is that you do, and then how do you connect with this idea of zero hunger?
Yeah, so I started, telling my story a little bit, but essentially it was from those travels starting as a student, and I also at the same time really love fashion and design. So Feed came from this very personal sort of grappling I had with how to connect my peers with the realities of hunger and poverty that I was seeing around the world. Because hunger is one of those, as we all know, extremely massive, extremely overwhelming, can be very abstract if it's not your daily reality. And it does as sort of an individual citizen, how do you then sort of start where you are, which I love from the last panel. And Feed is that way to give people an entry point to do so. So we're a consumer goods brand. Every product we make and sell, there's a number on it, and that signifies the amount of meals you'll donate when you make that purchase. And for me, it really is just about being not only a fundraising vehicle for great hunger fighting organizations on the ground. Share Strength, I know, is here, is one of our great giving partners in the US, but about being that conduit to engage others in this seemingly overwhelming and massive SDG2 goal to end hunger.
Do you know by now what difference or what change that you're making in the world?
So to date, it's very measurable. I mean, hunger, unlike many world issues, we can measure it. We know there's a solution. It's not rocket science. To feed people nutritious food solves hunger. And to date, very proud we've been able, and really through our community of customers and advocates, been able to give over 100 million school meals to kids. So we've specifically focused on school meals because it's getting kids not only that nutritious meal they need a day, often maybe the only meal they'll get, which I've seen happen time and again, unfortunately, but it's really incentivizing kids to go to school, get an education, and with that education, especially in countries where the gender balance is not equal by any means, they have a much better chance of breaking out of the poverty cycle they're born into. So we support school feeding abroad in 62 of the poorest countries around the world, as well as free nutritious school meals here in the US.
When I asked Jane what was the story that she was going to use to illustrate the work that she's doing, the work that Kellogg's is doing, as well as being focused on that Sustainable Development Goal number 2, and she said 2 words, or words and a letter.
Special K?
Yes.
Yes.
I used to steal my mother's Special K.
Oh, yeah.
And then I used to pretend that I hadn't eaten it and then just shake it up in the box and hope that she wouldn't notice. And I'm really old. So this brand has been going around for a long time.
Yes, it has.
Yeah.
Yes, it has. And I think there's, culturally, there's never been a better time to reframe what Special K can do in service of women, of strong women.
May I just mention for millennials, Special K many years ago was a diet cereal. It was, if you ate Special K, you would get slimmer.
Yes.
But now,
yes. Our goal is if you eat Special K, you'll get stronger.
Nice.
Yeah, so we're really rethinking the way that we innovate on Special K. We believe through our research and also through reports from the World Health Organization, for example, we know that women connect what they eat with how strong they feel. But the reality is 7 out of 10 women globally aren't getting all the nutrition that we need. And when we don't get the nutrients we need, we're actually limiting our bodies from being as strong as they can be. And so this is what we call the strength gap, which is the gap between a woman's full potential and her current strength. And we believe that it's within every woman to be able to close this gap. And so the question that we've asked ourselves on Special K is, how can we rally and deliver around this purpose? And so what we've started to do actually is to make sure that all of the Special K foods around the world are providing women with nutrients that they're not getting enough of every day. And through that, deliver on this purpose.
what kind of nutrients are you putting in that weren't in Special K before?
So when we look at, it's really interesting when you look at shortfall nutrients for women. There's actually a surprising number that are shared across all markets. Nutrients like fiber, magnesium, calcium is another one, vitamin D. So developing and emerging markets all have very similar shortfall nutrients for women, and that was a big surprising fact for us. But there are also some regional differences. So what we've had to do is make sure that Special K in that region is really specific to these delivering specific shortfall nutrients for women in that region. So that's a different way of approaching, how we make and design our food.
Okay, so this is, if you think about food in different parts of the world, Special K will be a luxury food. So there's only certain markets you're going to go to.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
But I think, one thing is that, when we think about hunger, hunger takes place happens in many formats, and insufficient nutrition for women everywhere is one of those. And so we need to start, of course we're on a journey, we need to start with in markets where we are already to close that gap. And then, eventually we want to be everywhere, obviously.
I feel some integration is about to happen. It might be the way that Anahita is staring at you.
Yeah, because I'm like, you can actually use some millets in your Kellogg's Special K or any Kellogg's, because, it's interesting to see that you've got different kinds of nutrition and different kinds of vitamins and micronutrients which come from millets. And we do have millet flakes. We do make millet, khichdi, which is basically, it's cooked with pulses and it's very, very nutritious. The government of Karnataka in India is actually promoting that and telling people to go back to the way that they were eating, because they'd lost all of that eating burgers and pizzas and sugar and, empty calories. So I think companies like Kellogg's can work with chefs like us and Chefs Manifesto, and obviously bring about that change and bring about some extra nutrients into your Kellogg's Special K and make it for stronger women.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm super excited to hear about that, because ultimately our goal is to deliver these nutrients inherently from the ingredients that we use instead of through fortification. And so, we have to become much more purposeful about the ingredients that we use in our food, and it really is quite a big feat. It's not an easy, feat to accomplish, especially for a big food company. But what gets me really excited and what gets me up in the morning is if we can make this change, the impact is tremendous. And so there's never been, again, a better time to start doing this. Yeah, so let's keep talking.
Jane, I'm just wondering, how do you have that conversation with the people who are on a higher pay grade than you about let's change our sourcing and what we're going to put into Special K and other cereals, because there are other cereals available and they might help other communities around the world, particularly if we're trying to head towards zero hunger in the future. How do you have that conversation? You could role play with me if you want. I can be, is it Stephen who's the head of Kellogg's?
Yes.
Yeah, I'll be him. Yes, Miss Coe?
If we don't do this, we're missing out on a great opportunity to make an impact on the world.
Good pitch, let's do it.
Great.
Lauren.
Yes.
Talking food here, but then you're talking fashion. Do you see that we talked about threads in our earlier panel. Do you see the threads here?
There's 100% a thread. I think sometimes food even leads fashion in many ways, and there are trends clearly that weave through fashion and trends that clearly weave through food. Now I would say is much more a moment where natural is obviously extremely important compared to when I was born over 30 years ago. Yeah. And that's translated now to, fashion, to the beauty market as well. So I think they're just culturally these massive changes that consumers not only want, but sort of demand from the brands that they are loyal to. What was or is conscious consumerism is now kind of edging towards activist consumerism, where consumers will, support or boycott brands based on the values that they stand for. So it's really a kind of neat moment, especially to be as a social entrepreneur, because consumers, especially younger consumers, are looking to businesses to do good for the world. They're not, whereas I think before in prior generations, you look to government, you look to nonprofits, and they're in charge of doing good for the world, and businesses are over here, creating value for shareholders. It's much more integrated now, and businesses that win are the ones that hold that value true. And I would say with Kellogg's, I know the Kellogg's Foundation and the founder's story, and so much of the revenue is generated back to hunger-fighting causes and really important causes. So it's neat, and I would say more consumers could know about that or should know about that. It's neat when it's so ingrained in a company's kind of founding intention and in the mission. And obviously there's much more to be done on all of our fronts.
I'm just going to pick up from you. So we've actually been having some conversations. Chefs have been having some amazing conversations. I just want to quickly introduce the Chefs Manifesto, if I may. Okay, so the Chefs Manifesto is actually this. It's made by chefs. It's for chefs, but if you want to remove the name chefs, you can actually just put people there. It's a people's manifesto. It can be a homemaker's manifesto. It can be a business manifesto. It basically looks at 8 thematic areas which tick mark all the 17 SDGs, which we have to achieve by 2030. And I mean, we're really going to try and achieve that. Chefs are going to try and achieve that. But they can't do everything. What we can do is cook nutritious, healthy meals and make it delicious. So once it's delicious, then you're going to be able to buy it, you're going to be able to cook it, and you'll obviously be able to be a part of SDG2 and play a role in that. So that's the Chefs Manifesto, everyone. And if you're not following it on Instagram, please do. Please open your Instagram and follow Chefs Manifesto. And whoever likes our page the most gets one of these.
So Jane, I'm just thinking about, this is a giant enterprise to try and get different areas of different professions to actually work together.
Yes.
And that's just traditionally really difficult. But you have a background in marketing. So what would you do? What would be your way to actually tell the food industry, the fashion industry, private corporations? How would you get them all to work together?
That's a good question. I thought you said no hard questions.
That's not a hard question. Not with all of your experience.
You know, I think it comes down to belief and conviction, and having belief and conviction that you can actually make a change. And when you have that conviction, you can convince anybody anything. And so for me, it really started very much from day one when I joined Kellogg, and when we uncovered this fact about women and their shortfall nutrients, and really telling that story over and over again relentlessly has been really instrumental for us to finally actually make that change. And you know, again, it's not easy because, you know, we're a big company and we have, you know, when you make a small change, it has a huge impact from supply chain and manufacturing. But it's really demonstrating the value to leadership that this is something that we have to do. Yeah.
Jane said something to me a little bit earlier, and she said, having watched the first panel, she said it was really good that she wasn't the only lone warrior in the room. And I'm just wondering, Anahita, do you, and also Lauren, do you feel that you're a lone warrior, or do you feel that the other warriors are kind of coming up behind you as well? Anahita, you go first.
I think everyone here is so empowered. The first panel was amazing. I mean, like I was speaking to you earlier, I felt like there was literally a plant coming out of the soil when Gerda was speaking. She was just like, it was amazing. So I think that got all of us really charged up, and everyone's here, you know, for the SDG2s, for #ZeroHunger. But it's not only something that you're going to be doing on social media, it's something that you're going to be doing at home with your family, what you cook, what you put into your, you know, in your children's diet, or in your kitchens, or, you know, in your business. But what's interesting to see is that there is this paradox. All of us are talking about, you know, SDG2, and we're talking about Zero Hunger. We're talking about what can Jane do and what can Lauren do. But the sad bit is it's not really converting as fast as we want it to. We do see a lot of waste, and I mean, I've been in New York for 2 days, and I'm not going to just say that in New York there's a lot of food that gets wasted. But I think from where I come from India, we have seen, and we do see a lot of people go hungry. when you see it firsthand, and if you hear about it, it's very different. When you see it, you actually know, and you realize the importance of like a hot, healthy meal. So it's a policy in our homes that we don't waste food. If you cook something, you will pack it up and you will, keep it in your fridge, and you will, reuse it in, as a new dish for your family. But not because we can't buy it, or we're not at that economic status where we can't afford it, but it's just that you know that there are people out there who are not getting a hot meal, who are not getting food. So wasting that, when I see it here with all of us, and we're all fighting for the same thing. We're all actually contributing to the same thing. And then when we waste food, it's just, you're taking 2 steps forward and then taking 4 steps back. So food wastage for us is criminal, because at the same time we're wasting food, and at the same time, people are going home hungry. So that gets us a little riled up, and it's a bit emotional.
So Lauren, this idea about being a lone warrior, and Jane was saying, I'm so glad I'm not the only passionate person in the room. How do you feel about that? Do you feel that you now have more people who know what you're doing, understand it, and who also are carrying the torch?
It's a great question, and I think for me, my heart is still heavy many days, feeling that we're not making the traction we need globally, even locally, and it's hard even as someone who is day-to-day focused on this issue, not feeling like it's 2 steps forward, 4 steps back occasionally. But I've found hope in the thousands and thousands of customers that we have that are choosing to purchase feed instead of other products because of that give back. And I find hope in people hosting feed suppers around the country in order to kind of do these grassroots fundraisers. So, and even honestly, walking down the street in New York and seeing someone carrying a feed bag randomly, like it just lifts my spirits. So I think, with any kind of humanitarian, true missionary type, it's hard to not feel alone and defeated, and I think it's why these kind of convenings are so important, and just meeting people on the ground, whether they're embedded in big companies or whether they're, entrepreneurial chefs, all making a difference. Because it really, I think the solution to this, as with many world issues, will come from many different directions and through that true collaboration. But I think, the main thing that we need to grapple with here is how to, not only you set the SDG goals up here, but how to get that groundswell up and make it really, truly real for people. Like, how can people start where they are? What are those easy, very tangible steps, whether it's, food waste in your home, whether it's the brands you shop from, and making, I think also connecting a piece of all this, specifically with Hungers, is connecting people to where their food comes from. We live in a day and age where we can have radical transparency, but often it is complex, and it's harder for companies to invest in that for whatever reason. But I think, again, customers are demanding that from their companies. And I think that's also really exciting because of technology and because of smartphones, and we can have that true connection to where our food is coming from and the impact our purchases are having.
Jane, as an innovator, and if other people are watching you and listening to you and thinking, I would like to do what Jane does, how do they do that? How do you do it? Because that's what happens at the end of the panel. People say, I love what you said. I would like to do that too. And I've heard those conversations.
Yeah. So again, I think it's about, it is about that relentlessness and really sort of influencing all of the different markets around the world that have Special K to rally around this cause and to really challenge the system in a way that provides better good for the society. So what can I say except
All right.
just...
I just wrote down challenge the system. Now I'm going to ask you, and how do I do that? Sorry. She's not going to talk to me after the end of this panel.
I think demonstrate the value of...
But how did you do it? I mean, you don't have to think big picture. You can just think, how did you challenge the system?
Well, I think, as we were looking at repositioning Special K from a diet brand, to a strength brand, we really looked at what's our unique way into this space. And what we found was, everybody talks about female empowerment, and I think the key unlock was that women are already empowered. They empower themselves, but what we can do as a food brand is that we power women so that they can empower themselves. And so I think it's telling that story and saying, look, this is the way that we can differentiate ourselves from all of the other food brands out there. Really demonstrating the business value, the marketing value of what we're trying to do was really for how I was able to get this idea across. Yeah.
Because you come from different parts of the business world, I asked you to prove your integration by asking each other questions. And now is this part.
And now is the time.
Lauren.
Sure, I guess I'm curious, Jane. When do you find it hard to get sort of that internal buy-in or for your team? I guess it was a business problem you were helping solve.
Yeah.
How though specifically on the hunger front are you all engaging with Special K?
Yeah, so for Special K, as I said, we're a brand that is, classically, there's no other really food brand that's been so tied with women. And so we do have a tremendous opportunity to address some of the nutrition issues that women are experiencing across the world. In terms of hunger, I think some of our other brands are doing that quite well. In fact, we have some work going on that's really looking after kids' growth and development in emerging markets. And so each one of our portfolio of brands actually has a different role in addressing sort of, all of the issues surrounding SDG2. Yeah.
Well, it's not funny, but interesting. When I was learning more even about the issue of hunger here, someone was showing me around a food pantry, and they were saying that someone who's malnourished is actually hungry. Someone who's obese, it could actually be hungry because they're malnourished. Yes. And I think there's sort of a misnomer, which is clearly what you're trying to address as well, that someone just may not be getting the proper nutrients, right. Maybe getting calories, but not the proper nutrients, and thus they're hungry, quote unquote.
Yeah, definitely. I think, when you look at the data, women in the US have just as many shortfall nutrients as women in some of the emerging markets, which is really surprising. And that was really eye-opening for us when we really started to look at that data. And then I basically said, listen, Special K is a great way to get those nutrients in women, whether they're in Mexico or in the US.
Yeah. To that point too. Oh, sorry. You
okay.
First.
No, I was gonna ask her a question too, but do you wanna go ahead first?
No, I think for both of you, you go first. You go.
Okay. So I was gonna. I know. Yeah. So I was gonna ask you about, obviously Special K is something that you've been working on, but how do you? It's more for the urban market, right? So how are you gonna get those nutritional needs that women probably need in rural areas or villages or smaller cities where they probably can't buy a box of the Special K? Are you going to come up with something which is healthy and nutritious and probably easier on a person's budget or more economical? How are you going to do that? Are you going to make something? Are you going to come up and innovate something for them?
Yeah, so that's a really good question, and to that question, I'll answer. We're obviously on a journey, right? And we're just at the beginning of our journey, and we obviously recognize that we have a long way to go. I think in terms of Special K, the reach is massive for Special K. Certainly in the U.S., it's pretty much it's in a tremendous number of households, so we're able to reach both urban and rural areas. Special K is pretty much carried in every supermarket or grocery store. I think in some of the other markets, like India and Mexico, obviously the economic differences between developed and emerging markets for us poses a really interesting challenge for Special K because we're under different sort of a cost structure or margin structure in those countries. So it's definitely a challenge for us to think about how do we put more nutrition into our food and keep it affordable and accessible for everyone. And that's something that we have to continue working on. We don't have it solved today for sure. So,
Lauren.
Putting Jane on the spot. The hot seat. No, I think, one thing that I really noted and that struck me even early on in my travels was just how powerful women are in the issue of hunger. I mean, women are the providers for their family in the sense that they're the ones cooking the meals and making sure their children are fed, and so often women eat last, which is also kind of not surprising, but hard to swallow as a woman. So I guess I just would wonder, and kind of what you see, and obviously you work on kind of addressing women's nutrition needs all day, and you are a woman chef. How do you sort of see women's roles playing out in this issue specifically?
So Anahita says, I know this because I did a little bit of research on how you see your role, is that being a woman chef is not that big a deal. Being a chef is more important. And I totally get that. And I feel the same about my profession.
Yeah,
so being a woman anything
Yeah.
it's just kind of obvious.
just-
I
I
didn't
think
even
it just
mention
gets-
the
no,
makeup of the panel because it's
absolutely.
kind of obvious.
It just gets annoying. I mean,
Yeah.
why do you have to put your gender before your profession? So every time there's a question that, oh, I mean, you're a woman chef or you're a female chef, or how does it feel or how does that feel? I'm like, I'm a chef. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, right? You have to do your job. You have to be in a hot kitchen and you have to be yelling. It doesn't matter. But
I'm just curious about you being in a hot kitchen and yelling.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, yell something out to back there at the cereal bowl, because I just want to hear your yelling chef voice.
Justin. Yeah, so Justin's the chef right there, and he doesn't let anything go waste. So he's probably just checking who's wasted their food.
All
right there.
Let me just say, just take a pause just for a moment. What questions do you have? Put your hands up. Or thoughts that you have. All right, where's the microphone? Very good, excellent. Just stand there, and I will volunteer somebody's thoughts in just a moment. All right, Anahita, carry on.
Yeah, so I was saying, as you said, that it doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, you're a chef, and that way, you're an activist, you're an entrepreneur, you're a politician. You're not a female politician or a male politician, right? So why is there this constant use of female or woman?
I agree with that,
So
by the way,
that is wrong.
But the question is,
More how
to
to
Lauren's
influence.
question, why did you ask
Absolutely.
that question?
I asked more, in the sense that women make household decisions. They're the ones putting money towards buying millet or Special K, and there's so much power in our purchases.
Yes.
So I guess in general, like how to not rally women for women's sake, but for the power they hold as the kind of household decision maker when it comes to food.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I think, the current paradox is that you have females or mothers or women cooking at home, but they're not cooking in kitchens. And I'm giving you an example in India. So I am a chef in India, and I've got the rest of my team is male. That doesn't bother me. But the thing is that there is this paradox. Women are cooking, women are feeding. They are the people who conserve your cultures, your traditions, your heritage, all the food that we eat. But the sad thing is they're not being seen that much in professional kitchens. So that's the current paradox. But I can tell you that we are, and I'm speaking for myself and from India as a young chef, not male or female, just a young chef. We've actually come up with a group called the Young Chefs Association for Sustainable India, where chefs from different restaurants, and we actually try going back to 2 ingredients every month that we've stopped cooking because of globalization, because of the impact of urbanization. It could be anything. And every single month we celebrate 2 ingredients that we've forgotten.
What were the last 2 ingredients that you
We
celebrated?
did jamun. Jamun is a fruit in India. It's a purple-colored berry, which used to be had all the time. It used to be falling off trees on the street. Nobody has it anymore. You don't see those trees anymore. And amaranth, which is a grain, which is in this pouch. And it's called Rajgira in Hindi. And I made something out of it yesterday just to show people that this is the flavor, this is the texture. And that's why I love Chef Pierre for it. He got the fonio, I got the millet, we're brother and sister.
All right. So Lauren, Anahita, Jane are here for you to chat to. Where's the microphone? Come out here so we can see you. And I'm going to direct you to the lady in the green and white. Keep going, keep going, keep going. She's got auburn hair and she's looking terrified.
Oh, no.
Walk towards her. Very good. Very good. Excellent. This is called volunteering your thoughts.
Yeah,
Yes.
whether you would like to or not.
Yeah.
That's why it's called volunteering. Hello.
No, I think what's interesting is just the discussion about women, but also it was a conversation I was having with a colleague as well. I work at the World Food Program, and we've done actually even studies on the habits of adolescent girls. But the question becomes too is how do you start? It's a lot of even major food companies that we've worked with, especially in the developing space, are talking about how do you bring nutrition into the diet, how do you introduce vegetables, et cetera, et cetera. But the question is, how do you bring men and boys into the discussion and start changing those roles as well? So it's more of a comment that I think why we sit here and talk about women, we should also be talking about how we're bringing men and boys into the equation.
That's a really good thought. How would you suggest?
Well, how would I suggest that? I mean, these are cultural changes that we would want to hopefully make on the ground. I mean, that's what we're all here to basically address. I think one of the things too that we've learned, and I'm co-opting this actually from the colleague I was talking to, is that basically there's also certain roles also for a young woman in the household that might make a dish that makes her father appreciates it, and there's that rite of passage from mother to daughter too. So it's just where it means for culture as well. But the question is if we don't bring our boys into the dialogue, I think as women, and protect sort of, actually I'm going to say something that Michelle Obama said that I thought was really interesting. She said basically we raise our daughters and we love our boys. So the question is how do we actually start bringing boys into the dialogue as well?
Sure. Who wants to take that? How about the chef who works with just men?
Yep.
I'm volunteering the answer as well as the questions.
So like she said, I think, and I'm speaking from my country, I think what's happening is that there's this cultural shift that's happening. We are including more men, more boys in the kitchen. We're not leaving them out. And it did happen about 20, 30 years back when it used to be just a woman in the kitchen or a woman putting out the meal and obviously eating it last, like you said. But I think there is this change. We want to empower our women, and we want to let them go to work. We want to let them be the change makers and actually bring in some income to the family and step out. And I think that can only happen if we include our men. So I'm going to definitely pick up from your from the comment that you made there. We get them into the kitchens. We make them, we empower them. We teach them. We're not here to tell anyone to do what they should be doing. We're here to just suggest. We're here to give you ideas. We're here to build on what your thoughts are. And I think bringing everyone, kids, families, communities, farmers, everyone together is what we can do. And obviously give them good recipes, healthy, yummy recipes. Yeah, so that's what it is.
I'll add to that as a mother of 2 little boys. I think it does start at home, and it starts with examples of, and expectations. There's a great theorist, African actually, came up with the term cosmopolitanism, which basically says, if you're exposed to a different way of life, there's no way of unlearning that. So in terms of how that relates to the developing world, if boys, girls are exposed to, amazing power chefs and women in government and higher positions and having that authority at the home level, at the company, community level, there's no way to go back from that. And I am hopeful in that regard that the world is progressing in the right direction, and women aren't just allocated to the home, if you will. But the reality is that women still are mainly the ones in charge of food and all that. So my question was less to start us on the gender path, but more to say, I think women play a really important and vital role in the SDG2 goal specifically because those day-to-day actions and choices generally do fall to women compared to men.
Question at the back. Hello.
Hi there. My name is Margot Jacobs. I'm with Grameen Foundation, and this is actually in addition to that conversation as well as a question. So the addition would be that through our Freedom from Hunger India Trust, we actually ran a program that was designed to reduce anemia rates in women in rural India. And what we found was actually that it was a gender transformation that was needed in the family. And by actually getting families to eat together, we were able to get the husbands and the men to understand what their wives and what their children were eating. Because the men had been eating by themselves first and getting the vast majority of the meat and the vegetables, and the women were eating primarily rice and sauce. So by diversifying that nutrition, we were able to see the anemia rates drop significantly in that region, and it was solely through gender dialogues and getting these families to eat together as a whole. My question, though, goes back to once you get kind of a more unique and diverse nutrition into the regular rotation of a family, how do you keep those meals in rotation? How do you not default back to what the family is used to preparing or what they're used to rotating through on a weekly basis?
That may be a question for the room, because there may be somebody who's better qualified in this room to actually answer that question. Is there anybody else who feels that they can tackle that? Because being a chef, that doesn't necessarily mean how do you keep that going in the family.
I mean,
and
the
Lauren, you're a mum,
Yeah,
but that doesn't mean
probably.
that you're uniquely qualified to answer that question, because I think that's something that's almost specialized.
Yes, but I can possibly part answer that, and
Yeah.
I can just, contribute and say that usually, in India, we do eat together. Obviously, in according to her studies, there are places where women eat last and they actually don't get enough protein and iron. But I think, and I've seen the government's been doing a lot of campaigning around that and promoting diets which are rich in iron and zinc, and helping out rural families. Also, like I was saying, we were talking about millets, and I think just advocating the right kind of nutrition, telling people that it could be a healthy meal and it could be yummy, that's the only way to keep it going. Because if it's not delicious and you're just going to force it down someone's throat and it's just going to look like it's not going to be looking good, it's just a bowl of something, you have to eat it, you're going to tell them to eat it right now, and as soon as you walk out, they're not going to eat it because that's not delicious. So I think that's where people like chefs come in, and they can give you solutions by giving you delicious recipes, by empowering the women in the house to actually prepare those meals, because then when you're not there, they can still prepare those meals and you can still get that diet going.
Yeah, I think
If I can add to that, I think it's sort of the intersection between that and making something easy, convenient, and accessible. And I think if you can find that intersection, that's where the magic happens. So again, a question that we keep asking ourselves at Kellogg is how do we make that easy and convenient so it doesn't take a mother an hour to prepare something, because sometimes some of these grains take a long time to cook. And so how do we make that process easier so that it's easier to do it every day?
Your face was saying it doesn't take a long time to
I was
cook.
just going to say it doesn't even take 15 minutes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So yeah.
Okay. I'm wondering what Steve is thinking about this. Steve is sitting here, this row here. Very importantly, there you go.
You'll call anybody, right? I think it's a great discussion, but I think the combination of access, which you talked about, aspiration, and deliciousness, all those things coming together is what creates the magic. Because you said it very well. If you ask me to eat my broccoli, I won't eat my broccoli. But if you give me something with the same nutrients that I really find delicious and it's accessible, then that's where the magic happens.
Something I'm going to ask you to do that I didn't ask you to prepare, so it's really going to come straight from the heart or the gut. So we're sitting here talking about transforming food systems. You are sitting here as innovators and entrepreneurs. What is the most innovative thing that you've ever done that will help this audience as a sort of call to action that might inspire them? Jane, I know something's come to you immediately. The most, or one of the most.
Yeah, so I think it's like I said, we're on a journey, and I think the thing that I'm most excited about, that I'm continuing to fight for, is this idea of inherency, nutrition inherency. It means that we have to completely rethink the way that we innovate food, and typically, a big food company like Kellogg, the first question we ask is, what do consumers want? that we can make. What's the white space in the market? But when you think in this way, we actually start by saying, what are the nutrients that we want to get into our food first, and how do we choose those ingredients? What ingredients do we use that can actually bring those nutrients inherently? So you actually start with a very different question when you start your innovation projects, which is, okay, what are the nutrition targets, and how do we deliver that in a food that is amazing and delivers the experience that the consumers want? And so I think that's, for me...
What does your consumer want? Think that's the most innovative thing that you've done, the most innovative thought. Yes.
Well,
so
no,
I can move on to Anahita.
But
Something like that.
Yeah.
Okay. Anahita, the most innovative thing that you have done that will inspire this audience.
So I think just going back to my own roots and being proud of my own Indian heritage. It's not innovative, but I would say it's the most impactful for me. It's what's made me grow, and I feel like I can probably reach out to more people in that direction by telling them that, listen, you need to see what's going around you, you need to see what your roots are, you need to look inwards, you need to see what your grandmother ate. And we've sort of lost that connect, and I hope as a chef I can be a connector and share my experiences, share my, obviously my recipes and my ideas, and obviously create that impact on a consumer to go back home and think that, do I want to eat wheat or rice, or do I want to go for something healthier like a millet?
Oh, which reminds me, where is the millet?
Someone's kept it.
Okay, very good. Who did you want to award it to?
I will award it to anyone who has followed our Instagram page, the Chefs Manifesto. Has anyone, if you raise your hand, that's yours. That's hers.
All right, there you
right
go.
there.
If you could bring the millet over to just here. Congratulations, you've won a bag of millet.
And it's got recipes too, so it's got
With recipes,
With
so you won't be
recipes.
stuck. Lauren, finally, the most innovative thing that you've done that will be almost a blueprint or helpful to other people in the room.
I guess what I'm most proud of is that Feed as a company has led with a mission, first and foremost. And I think almost nowadays that's not as innovative because so many people are doing it, which also makes me very hopeful for the future. But essentially sort of showing that as an entrepreneur and founder, you can start something to do good in the world and also create something that is a sustainable business. And hopefully a model for others who feel like I do and want to make a change, but also love design or love food or have a certain skill set and passion that they can bring to the world and do things differently.
Lauren, Anahita, Jane, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Your panel.
Thank you.